John, so thankful to be here chatting with you, man. Like you said, as we were chatting beforehand, we only see each other at Maxwell events. So it's good to hang out here and chat. And, I was so fortunate to, one, get to know you a couple years ago. We were at an event. We got to spend a day golfing together at Pebble Beach, but then have just continued to see each other. And thankful for the example that you've been in my life, and I know so many others. So thankful to have the conversation with you, talk about leadership. I mean, that's how we know each other. That's what this podcast is about. And so I just want to kick off and again say thank you for the time to join me, and look forward to the time we have today to chat.
Yeah, man. Tyler, same to you, man. Thank you for having me. And man, what a blessing it's been to you say we played golf together. I say you play golf and I went. I'm not the greatest golfer. So, but yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, see, here's the thing, John, is I've been to enough of those events. You've been to those events. They usually put people that shoot the same level, have about the same handicap together. So I can't say that I'm any better golfer than you. That would be unfair to anyone.
That is true. You do bring up a good point. Yeah. I tell John and his team sometimes they need a double handicap. Like if it's 20 over.
Yeah.
I try to get there, but I just don't have time.
Well,
so, I mean, I do enjoy it.
One of the guys that joined us that day, one of your friends from Texas, he's gone on to now spend a lot of time golfing. So Chris Parvin, he's gone next level. He's like, I'm not going to be with those John and Tylers anymore. And it's like, okay, yes. Chris, if you got to go do that, that's fine.
That's right. We'll keep playing together. We'll keep having our leadership talks and see what's up with that.
Totally. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about leadership and excited to just talk to you about your life and your experiences and all the wisdom that you've gained. And I want to kick off with this. And I want you to just hear this quote. It's something that I wrote in my early 20s. And I happened to think about it just about 30 minutes ago. And I wanted to kick off with this. And I wrote, "The rewards of childhood are not seen by the child, but rather the adult that grows from the child."
Wow, that's good.
So as I thought about your story and where you are now, how does that quote hit you and just that thought?
I think when we're young, we don't actually even know. We don't fully understand the overall perspective. And I think that's the thing that is so different in my. I just turned 50 last year. And I think that's the thing that sticks out to me the most is my perspective of the way that I grew up versus my perspective today. I saw a lot of those challenges and struggles as just that. And now I see I wouldn't be who God's called me to be today without that. And so it's early on, I was blessed to actually have a mentor that actually owned a plumbing company. And man, just the way he lived his life and walked it out, he was beginning to take me down this path of understanding a different perspective. But looking back, even today, I mean, you know this with what's going on in the world today, we've got real challenges going on right now that we have to lead through. Mm-hmm. And so we actually just had this conversation with some of our leaders yesterday that so much of it is, instead of looking at the problem, look at the solution that can actually come out of it and the win that we can turn it into. That's the way I take that in the back end of at 50 today. I look back at when I was 11, 12, 13 into my 20s and 30s and even 40s. And praise God, I had somebody that actually taught me that don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution and what good can come out of it. And what can we learn from it?
Mm-hmm. So, as the listeners that have, opened with an opening and kind of a little bit your bio, John Houston Homes, you guys have now several companies that are impacting a ton of people in the greater Dallas area. And, all of that, though, came through a lot of hardships. And you mentioned being 11. And part of why I say that quote is the impact of what happened as a child in your life. And now why you're doing the things that you're doing. So for a guy who at 11, lived with his older brother who was 15 and, that was then you're entering adulthood, as I read your book and know you, man, to know those things about John, and it's not to set you apart, but man, how much does that set you into a place of appreciating the people that work in your business and what they're going through?
Yeah, I think it gives me a whole different perspective because, and here's what I want to say, all your viewers and listeners, man, we all have challenges. We all have trials and tribulations. So when I just share my heart with humility that this is just my story, but I know every viewer and every person has a story. And that's why I believe God wants me to just share the hope that's within me sometimes, is because, when I was 11 and my brother was 15, that's when our parents left us and moved to 2 different cities and left us there. That's when we actually had to start our first business and started a landscaping company. And, it was through those, and that's how we provided for ourselves. So what's interesting to me about it is through that journey, that chaotic life that we were living, my brother we would get up, we'd mow yards till school started. He would drop me off at school. We would go to school during the day. He would pick me back up after school. We'd mow till dark. And that became our normal way of life. And so this chaotic life that I was living, I didn't actually know I was living. I didn't actually know that until I started dating who's now my wife of almost 30 years. And I saw her family and I'm like, oh, wait, this is actually what family's supposed to look like. And it actually took me a few years of processing that to even be able to go, wait, what I've been living is not normal and this is normal. And I think about that even with your viewers and your listeners now. I think that's the power of, I'm 50 years old, CEO of 7 different companies. But man, you know who I learned from? I learned from our other leaders. I learned from people like you, people like Maxwell, people like our AP girl. One of our, what, not in a disrespectful way, but one of the lowest paid jobs in our organization, I can still learn from them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about leadership. It's simply influence. So these people at every level are influencing me. But if I wouldn't have had to mow yards, then later we started a janitorial company to make extra money, and I wouldn't have had to clean toilets. I don't think I would have the same value because I tell our staff all the time, whether you're the person that cleans the toilets here or whether you're the CEO, guess what? Both of them are just as important. And the reason why they're just as important is because I could be the best CEO with a dirty building and dirty restrooms and places people can't work, and it means nothing. Right? But if I lead terribly, then it affects the person that's doing the janitorial work. So it's just always a humbling reminder for me to go, none of us are any better than the next person. It's just this happens to be the gift and the influence God has given me today. And I've got to continue to steward that well and realize that the people are the thing I have to steward the most. And that's huge for me,
Is that a responsibility born over time or born out of the experience of, oh man, I got to figure out how to, really my brother and I link arms together and get through this life?
Yeah. I think it was a mind shift for me. So when we started that, by the time I was 19, I had either been living with my brother or by myself for about 8 years. And 1990, I was making roughly $90,000 a year, which is equivalent to about $200,000 today. And it just wasn't doing anything for me. So I was making a lot of money, but what good was it? And so I don't know where your listeners are. For me, I'm a Christ follower, but I'm not trying to preach to anybody. That's just part of my life. And what happened to me was I went down this journey of losing everything I had. Ended up having to file bankruptcy, thinking that was one of the worst times of my life, other than when my mom committed suicide, going, where is all this going? Like, how do I get myself out of this? So I took on all this role and this pressure in these terrible times. And I was trying to figure out, how do I pull my boots up? How do I strap them up? How do I do these things to get through this? And nothing was working. And literally what was happening was I was having to learn to die to myself. That my ways aren't the best. And I need the Lord. I need wisdom. I need other people that I can run this race with. And so it's completely changed my perspective. So for me, it shifted when there's a passage in scripture that it's Psalms 24:1 that says the earth and everything in it, including its people, are God's. That was the big shift for me when I realized, wait, I'm not even, as a Christ follower, I'm not even my own. As a leader, these people aren't here to serve me. I'm here to serve them. You know what's crazy about that as a leader, and I know you know this, Tyler, but I get excited about it, is, man, when I try to pour into every level of leadership that I have influence over, and you see them rise up, and now they're taking my job, I love that. I get more motivated about that than I do the amount of money we make, because they light up, and it's just exciting.
So hey, that excites me too. And I know it. And to me, it's the difference between being an incubator and an incinerator. If people come through, your organizations and you burn them out and they go somewhere else and leave because they're burnt out, that's an incinerator. And I know from your heart, and I'd love to hear these stories about being an incubator. And why that hits me as you were sharing that is right before this. So now we're 17 minutes into the time start recording, and 19 minutes ago I got off the phone with a former employee of ours, and she's gone on to launch her own business and doing her own thing, and it's been several years, and she's done really well and excited, making a huge impact. And she goes, Tyler, I'm calling you because I'm asking for help, but at the same point, I also want to say that I yielded from what the experience I had with you guys to do this. And I explained to her, I'm proud of you, because to see you go and do something else is so amazing. So I'd love to hear, from your perspective, those people that have taken your job or gone on to do other things, kind of that proud parent that I know that you have. How is that really putting legs to your legacy?
Yeah, it's interesting that you're even asking this question right now, because literally one of the number one questions I'm getting asked from other leaders right now is, how do you recruit? Because it's so hard for us to find employees right now. And I say this kind of humbly, but very rarely do we have to recruit. And I really believe it's because, not because I'm the greatest person, but I believe it's because our organization has purpose. It's bigger than just coming to work. We want to add value to people's lives. Our brand vision and mission is to help people find their way home by being joyful, hope-filled, loving guides. Well, that's huge to us because every business we have is real estate. So all of our employees can relate to that, and it gives them a purpose. But what I love, I'm going to share one quick story with you. There's a guy named Justin Bright that actually interned with us, because we do internships. He interned with us when he was at A&M, and so he did for 3 summers, and then we were like, dude, we want you to come to work for us full time.
Yeah.
So he came to work for us, worked for us 10 plus years, was knocking it out of the park. And in all honesty, I literally saw him as, I think that guy could be the next CEO. I really believed it. Now, I knew it was going to take him 20 plus years to get there, but we were pouring into him and pouring into others as if we want them to be next level C-level leaders. And if not in one of our companies, in another one. And so I love that, because he texted me one day and he said, hey, and he was at this point, he was still about 2 levels down, 2 levels below me. But I have such a relationship with a lot of our employees that he texted me and said, hey, can I meet with you for 15 minutes? Well, you know what that means. It either means they're leaving or something major's going on.
Sure.
And so I was discerning he's probably going to tell me he's leaving. So I meet with him and he says, hey, you remember that story that you tell all the time about how when you were leaving the investment company that you'd been at 7.5 years, you had 2 babies, and you felt like God said, dude, it's time to get out of the boat and experience the miraculous. Step out in faith. He's like, God asked me to do the same thing. And I've been wrestling with it because I love being here. I love your leadership, but that's what I got to do. And I was like, dude, first of all, my flesh does not want you to leave, but I'm telling you, you're making the right choice. And so then the next thing I said though was, I said, Justin, this is how much I believe in you. I want to invest in this business. And you know what he said to me? He said, John, I appreciate that, but the Lord told me I need to trust Him and not trust anybody else. Not, in other words, not take money from me.
Yeah.
And man, that's been probably 3 years ago, and the dude's killing it. I mean, he's just doing so good. And it's like, just seeing one of your little kids grow up.
Yeah.
And now he's got 3 kids of his own. He's been married for, going on 15 years. And it's just so powerful. So that's what motivates me. I love to see our leaders grow and raise up here, but I also know I don't own them.
Yeah.
And so I still have to help them raise their lids and be prepared to go to whatever place it is God wants them to go to.
To me, that's a leadership aspect that takes a lot of maturity. It takes a lot of humility, and it's as you shared, grown over time. And there's one of the things that stuck out that you shared in your book that I never picked up being around you, but because I think you grew past it. But it's something I had to work through. Is how much our hardships make the relationships around us challenging.
Yes.
Meaning, for me, it's kind of that intensity. And I know there's this amount. I've been, played golf with you enough to know there's an intensity that I want to do well, but I can do what I can do. But when that intensity from that hardships of I don't know how to get through other than push through creates those barriers in relationships. And, as you mentioned that about being an incubator, well, that comes after some probably tough times, and maybe it wasn't like that.
Yeah. I think for me, it came from me really trying to silo myself. And so in all honesty, I'd been hurt by a lot of different people. Some of them financially, some of them mentally, some of them spiritually, and relationally. So I basically had to come to this place of I can either be mad at those people and hold a grudge, or I can learn from those people. And so I had a mentor when I was probably my upper 20s, and he said, here's what I want you to do. Incredible leader. He was also my boss at the time, but he said, I want you to start making a list of all the great leadership qualities you want to have. And in the same notebook, I want you to keep a list of all the terrible leadership qualities you don't want to have. And man, I probably kept that journal for 10 years, 12 years, consistently looking back on that to go, okay, that's what I don't want to do. And so when I would catch myself in a tendency of heading down a path, I would go look at that and say, okay, this is what I don't want to do. What's the opposite of that? Yeah. And that's how I'm going to respond. And so it takes a lot of taking those thoughts captive, not responding to them, processing it, and then actually responding.
And I think, as I relate to that, and, again, in this conversation about leadership and in this world we live in now, that, the best way to grow an organization is to grow everyone in that organization. And if they grow out of it, then that's great because everyone's still growing. And I think about that from this time we're in, and everyone wants to hold on tight. They want to hold on tight because they're afraid and not willing to let go, knowing that until they let go, it's not going to grow. Yeah. And, you're an example of that. Your career is an example of that, of going through both sides of that, right? And having the quality of mentors and leaders around you, people to speak into you, but also speak into you with, partnership. One of the guys that I spend a lot of time with is Scott Wilson, who has made an impact in my life as well. And I know that as he's approached me as a mentor, but also it's like a partnership. And how important are those relationships, the partnerships, the people sitting at your table, as it is those mentors that are 10, 15 years down the road?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's huge. Yes. So Scott and I met 25 plus years, actually 30 years ago. Now, I mean, we've been best friends for years, and he's my neighbor for almost 20 years. So every time we move together. And so
it's kind of like it's kind of like a bad thing going. He just follows.
It is, man. No, we say, okay, here's where we're moving. Will you guys come with us?
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean,
it's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. But the power of it comes from when he's learning, I get to learn too. When I'm learning, he gets to learn too, because we're processing it together. And so neither one of us are condemning each other. Neither one of us are judging each other, but we're going, okay, if I can process this with you as I'm learning it, then you're going to actually learn it too, and you don't have to go through it. And I've seen that happen over and over again. And so I love that about Scott. But man, I'm incredibly blessed too that's how my executive team is. Our executive team, which is over all the family of companies with the 7 companies, we're just all real and transparent. And we'll literally at the beginning of almost every year, one of the things that we do is we talk about what our weaknesses are, because they need to know what I'm struggling with right now. I need to know what they're struggling with so we can help each other through that. But then we also talk about what areas are you excelling in and what areas do you feel like you need to grow in. And then we'll literally change things up sometimes so that each one of us can grow in our areas of leadership and responsibility at times to get better. And I just love that, because it's that whole iron sharpen iron thing. And none of us take ownership of any area we have, but we say what is best for where God's taken us and what is best for the organization and the people in the organization. And so how can we add value to that?
That is a model of learning that has been impressed upon me from probably the same source that for you is, it's layered learning. John Maxwell talks a lot about that. I love sitting at the table with him and with anyone else. And I think with that mentality, we're going to sit here. I'm going to bring an idea, but I know everyone else has a different perspective and value, and they're going to make it better. And there's not this turf war struggle of I have to own that idea. It comes out of it is we're all going to have a better idea when we leave here. And I think from a leadership perspective, if you've never been in that experience, it's hard to understand how genuine it really is. And then you're in it and you're like, I don't want to be in a different place.
Right.
Like this is the only place to go about life and business is when there's this freedom. And I'm going to take your idea and I'm going to put my spin on it and we're all going to make it better. And not like we'll get afraid of a different perspective on an idea.
Yeah. I'm going to actually throw you one other one too that actually got taught a couple of years ago. That's been a game changer for me. I don't know if you've ever heard of Rob Hoskins.
Yeah.
So Rob, actually, I was processing some stuff with him because he's a great mentor of mine too. And I was processing this idea with him, and I was like, man, I really want to go do this. And he was like, well, John, you got to ask yourself 3 questions. Is this idea for me to do? Is this idea for me to partner with somebody to do? Or is this idea for me to hand off to somebody else to do? Well, I've brought that back into not just as a visionary, as an entrepreneur, but all the way down into our leadership and our teams, that I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're in AP or if you're in IT or if you're having these ideas, that's a question. So it may be, if you ask that question, it may be you just want to go talk to marketing and say, hey, have you ever thought about this? Here's an idea. You guys might want to run with that. And that's what that's done for me though, too, is it's made me really realize I don't have to own everything.
Yeah.
And I don't have to control everything. Sometimes I'm simply just handing it off. And what's really cool about that though, is I actually saw Rob model that in an idea that God had given me. And I was like, this is so much bigger than me. I can't do this. And literally, man, they took that idea and ran with it, and they took it so much further than what I would have ever thought or imagined. And I'm like, praise God, they did something with it, because it's way better than what I could have done with it. And that's exciting to me too.
I think that, let me go back through those 3 points, because that gave me a tremendous amount of value. And as I thought about it, if you go into that, is it for me? Is it for me to partner with someone, or is it me to hand off? From a leadership perspective, but from a cultural point of view, when you can apply that to every position, you are actively creating every single position as a leadership position.
For sure. And that you value them.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing that it really does is when you begin to share that with people and they begin to open up and you begin to speak that over it, man, I think you're going to do better with this idea than I could have. All of a sudden, man, their lid and their capacity immediately just rose because I said it could. And that's just mind boggling to me. But then even with my story, I look back on the plumber who spoke that same stuff over me when I was in my low 20s. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s and 40s that I even began to understand what he was saying. And so he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And we can use those questions sometimes to hand that idea off to somebody else, and they get the win.
There's a piece of your book that you talk about in this idea of identity, who you are, what you do. I think of those, that last point again, and how imperative it is. If you can go into that, it's like, maybe my identity is I'm just the idea guy, right? Yep. And I don't have to hold on to what I do in my job. Maybe my just job gives me the perspective to have a lot of ideas to be a catalyst for others, right? And I think when you, again, apply that, is this for me? Is this for me to partner? Is this for me to hand off? If that's your lifelong identity, man, it's pretty freeing.
Oh man, when you understand what your gift is, it literally, so I'll tell you right now, like, I'm not a CFO. Do I understand some finance principles? Yes. But I'm not a chief strategy officer. Do I understand some strategy? I don't understand IT, but I know people that do. Let them go run in their lanes and run in it fast. That frees me up to actually be able to think more creatively, have more vision, and I don't have to carry the weight and the pressure of figuring all these things out. And so I was blessed that somebody actually taught me that early. And then, like, even when I was growing the business, in case some of your viewers are growing businesses, you don't always have to have the money to hire somebody full time to do that. I quickly learned what I need to do is hire a CPA that could also help me learn some of those financial principles that I needed to learn, but it's not breaking the bank. I was spending $500 a month instead of, thousands a month, and I was learning as I go, and it was helping her. Yeah. And so together it really helps us all grow.
Let's talk about the value of mentorship. We've touched on it a little bit, the different mentors, the partners you have. How much do you see where you're at in life, the experiences you've gone through? And I know you talk about the interns. I know some of the mentors the mentees that you've had in your organization. How much of that is just a heartfelt desire to be a shepherd to lost sheep and guys and girls that maybe are going through some of the same struggles that you had through life, that maybe don't have the clear path? How much of that is just a joyous responsibility?
Oh man, honestly, I get up in the mornings and sometimes I just tell my wife, dude, one, I've got an amazing wife that I don't even know why she loves me like she does. But I'm just blessed. I've got a, wonderful son, a wonderful daughter. And I look at that and I'm like, how many people have poured into their lives that had a desire to pour into them and help mold them and shape them in who God wants them to be. Now, it's up to all of us to choose what path we want to take. But if I have a young adult that is asking for that and they're seeking it, I say, hey, you guys pray about it, or you pray about it, I'm going to pray about it. And then if so, we're going to move forward with it. So I have a young man that actually interns with me now. He'll spend a year. We spend a year with him, and he'll work for me for a year, but he goes everywhere with me. Trips, family trips, everywhere. But it's because I want him to experience some of those things, some of those relationships that he never thought he could have. And what's interesting is I was even having a conversation with him last week, and what he was saying was a lot of times it's those little conversations that he actually gets the most out of. So the ones sometimes we think we're going to grasp all this. Well, the reality is what I think I'm starting to understand after doing this for a while as a CEO, I want them to get this really high level stuff. And the reality is it's actually the stuff that I consider very basic and general in my life that's just part of who I am. Those are the things they really grasp hold of. But what I also know is those things that we're teaching them now, there's going to come a day where he's going to be like, oh, I remember when John said this 20 years ago. Now I get it. Mm-hmm. And I get excited about those days because I think it changes the trajectory of their life. And if I didn't have people do that for me, I literally know I wouldn't be where I'm at. So it's huge for me. I love it because I would almost rather do that than have businesses, but I know the businesses is the tool and the vehicle God is using. So I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's having got to know a few of the people that you've spent time with, and at the same point, you allowing me the opportunity to be a mentor in their lives. It's fun to me from a perspective of being able to add value where you can speak into people from your experience. And it doesn't mean it has to be somebody that's in your life right now. It could be through that proximity of others. And to me, that is true leadership. Yeah. It's being able to impart that and help others and serve others through the value you have, and not look at it and say, hey, how can I get the most out of them?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's really cool about that is that I think the last time we were together was at Pebble Beach, if I remember right, with Maxwell. Is that right?
Hawaii.
Yeah. In Hawaii. Well, that night, we had dinner. You actually ate with one of those guys, one of the young guys that's working with me this year. Well, what you probably don't even know is when we left, one of the things that stuck out to him was you said something in that conversation about his relationship with his dad that you may not even remember that massively impact him. And so there were probably 3 different people, you being one of them, and 2 others that just said little things to him that gave him a whole different perspective about life, about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father and a husband. And my guess is you probably didn't even realize that, but that's because of the consistency of the way you live your life every day. Mm-hmm. How you lead as a husband, how you lead as a father, how you lead as a leader. It just comes out of you. And you didn't even realize that you impacted his life that much. And so you're modeling it as, in other words, what I'm saying. But I want to encourage all your viewers to realize that's really where I think most people are impacted, is when we less realize it, or least realize it, is probably when they got impacted the most.
Yeah. Well,
so, thank you for doing that, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, again, I didn't realize that. But it's cool. And at the same point, I didn't necessarily sit down and have dinner with them to do that. It was just to visit and learn about a guy. And I think that is putting a bow on this portion of it. The joy of mentorship is just learning about somebody else. It's learning about someone else, sharing a little bit about you. And to me, that's, if you take that same quality, as you expressed earlier, how you try to go through your organization and lead, it's doing the same thing. Man, that's when people are like, I want to be here. Or they say, I have an opportunity to go do something else. And you know what I want to do? I want to take those pieces and that experience that I took from the such great experience that I had and go share it with others. Maybe outside of the arena or umbrella that you could, right? And to me, that's that idea of incubation, that if someone can take the ideas that we're working through here today and go apply it in a completely different industry and positively affect it, well, then that's for the good of all people. And that's what excites me about doing this podcast and having a podcast and talking to people like you, is how can I help other leaders get healthy too? Because I had to get healthy. I had to get healthy in my relationships in all the different ways. And only through the process of getting healthy was I able to make an impact. And it is through that we all kind of put our layer in that together, to where I can use the experiences you've had together and now use the experiences with Christian that night to be able to say, oh yeah, you know what? That does positively impact myself and others.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I love about what you're saying, Tyler, is that there were probably a lot of years, if you're like me, you didn't realize you weren't healthy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where, for me, seeking wise counsel and seeking people that care about you, and people that have been around that are going to speak the truth to you if you ask. The hard part is sometimes as leaders, which I'm not talking about title, I'm talking about influential leaders. Sometimes that's the hardest part for us, is to go ask. And so I actually, that's something I've implemented over the last 5 or so years, is I'll just sit down with random staff at every level and ask them, what can I do different? Like, how can I lead different? Because there's 5 generations, I think, in our company, multiple different races. I need to make sure I'm impacting everybody's life, not just the ones I'm the most like. So I like interacting with people that don't think and act just like I do, because even though I'm trying to add value to their lives, they always add value to mine. I was actually with Dan Cathy, and what was interesting about it was I was so excited about going to meet him. And so I was like, hey, do you care if my daughter comes? So I took my daughter with me. And you know what's crazy? That guy poured into her for the whole day and a half we were with him. And he spoke so much great leadership and wisdom, but one of the most impactful things that he did was, here, I'm the CEO. I've got a couple other high level leaders that I brought, and he was still loving on us and respecting us. But man, he was point blank asking her questions about, tell me about your life. Tell me about what's going on with you. Tell me about how I can help you. And I was just blown away by that, because I was like, I had just never seen that modeled before that way. And man, she left so motivated and encouraged that it really challenged me to actually, I need to spend more time with the next generation. And he actually made an incredible statement that I think was a great leadership lesson, is he said, one of the reasons why they operate like they do is because they actually invite the next generations all the way down to the table. And they actually invite them to the table and say, what ideas do you guys have? Because you probably have better ideas than we do. And so a lot of the things that have been implemented in Chick-fil-A, they didn't come up with. These young next generation leaders that don't even have a title in their organization are getting them these ideas that have transformed Chick-fil-A. And that's what he'll say. And that was just really encouraging to me. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, is what I'm saying. You're all influencers. You're all impacting people, and you can still all grow. But I agree with you, Tyler. We've got to be healthy. But we also, in order to be healthy, we have to be vulnerable, because we have to be open and willing to ask the hard questions and actually receive the real truth of what areas are we not doing that good in, what areas are we not healthy in. And that's probably one of my favorite things about my relationship with Scott and my relationship with my executive team, is I can ask that question, and I know they love me and care about me enough that they're going to tell me the truth. And even if I don't like it.
Do you remember when, as you share that, and I appreciate we're talking about this idea of healthy leadership. I can remember the point to where I was able to start to see it, and there was people being willing to engage with me and flip that switch. And it was a very distinct time frame. It was actually getting involved with the very first step into the Maxwell organization, and kind of inside, outside, that was that catalyst for me. Was there a point in time for you, or was there an evolution towards that growing in your health as a leader?
Yeah, I actually do think there was that moment for me, and it was a leader that I had named Mike McWilliams at this investment company that I worked with. And he gave me this 2-year long project. It was a massive project. I had never led a project like that. And what was interesting is, when I got to the first meeting, I realized every person in that meeting was at least 2 levels higher than I was. First day out of that meeting, I went back to his office. I was like, dude, this ain't going to work. Like, I'm supposed to lead all these people, and I'm 2 levels below them. They're not going to do anything I say. And he said, exactly. You have to gain influence by showing up, being prepared, answering their questions, serving them. And I promise you, if you do that, they will come in alignment with what you're asking them to do. And he walked me through the process for 2 years, and we actually saw that happen. And that probably is the moment where it changed the most, because he saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And then he put me in a place where I had to actually start doing it. And that was the scary part.
That was the hard
I was like,
part.
dude, I was thinking you're the one taking the risk, man. Cause at the end of the day, you're the big boss. So, but I look back at that and it was actually one of the defining moments in my leadership.
Do you find yourself now doing that for others?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a very hands-off leader. But they always know I'm here. So any of my leaders that report to me, they literally could call me 24/7 and I'll answer the phone. So they always have access to me, but also tell them, just like any leader probably does, bring me the problem, but have the solution, because I want them to process it and have to think through it ahead of time. Now we're in a place in our organization that we're taking our strategy in every company we have. We've passed on the strategy to now 2 and 3 levels down, and they're actually having to come up with the strategies over the last 3 or 4 years. And what's really powerful about that is they buy into it. It's their strategy. And man, they're knocking it out of the park. And so all I'm there to do is give them the wisdom when they need it. They ask me questions when they need it. And sometimes they make the decision, the right one, and sometimes it's the wrong one. But to me, that's the cost of leadership. I'm okay with that. Even if it costs us, because it's going to make them a better leader. It's going to make them a better man and woman, that will actually more effectively lead. Yeah. So I love it. I get excited about it because, I'm a huge a fan of succession planning, but I think that's all the way through the organization. You need to do that from top to bottom. And sometimes we'll focus just on that with the top level leaders. And I really think it ought to be all the way through, so.
That makes sense. There's something that you shared in towards the end of your book. And I want to take the last few moments to focus on that. You talked about the importance of every single interaction of all, if a home sells within, John Houston Homes, how many different points of contact and how many different people are impacted by that one single transaction. And go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say that for me, that's what so much of business is about, is are we actually meeting people where they are? And are we making a positive impact in their life at those interactions? So for us, earlier I said that, I think what employees are looking for, and I really do believe this, I think they're looking for purpose. And so, many times we have people that are coming here that come to work for one of our companies, and they'll literally tell us, I could make more money somewhere else, but I don't feel fulfilled. Now understand, here's what I can tell you. We pay fair market value, but we're going to steward the money just like we're going to steward the people. Both of those are I've got to create them equal. Or if I just start throwing money at people, I'm telling them that their value is how much I can pay them, when in reality, the value is what they bring to the organization and what we can actually help them with in their lives. And so for me, the 60 touch points for every one house we build is just a reminder. Earlier I said, not trying to preach to anybody, but for me, we know, my wife and I know, God told us to start our very first business, and all 7 of them, for 2 reasons: to reach people for Christ and give to the kingdom. That's it. So the Lord always said, I never told you to sell a house. I never told you to make a ton of money. I told you to reach people and give to the kingdom. So for us, we break it down like this. So on average, you have, for every, now not in a market like today, but in a normal housing market, for every 10 prospects you have, you contract 1 house. And then so that engages the salesperson. So now all of a sudden the sales manager, the sales assistant, they know these are the 10 focal points I have. The prospect is just as important as the person that contracts, because they're all children of God. Then you go to the builder, and there's approximately, keeping it really simple, because that's what we try to do, there's 42 subs and suppliers. So that's 1 framer, 1 plumber. Well, if you've ever seen a job site, there's more than 1 framer out there, at least you hope.
Yeah.
So there's 42 there. Then it takes about 8 to close a house. So that's a title company, surveyor, different people like that. So total, that gives us 60 touch points. But what that also does is it engages every level of our organization. Every level is bought into the process because they play a part and they know what role they play. Now, here's the crazy part. So if we build 700 houses this year, which is about what we're projecting, that's 42,000 touch points we have. That's crazy. Yeah. And so for me as a believer, if I can just love people there and it impacts their life enough that maybe they want to follow Christ or they want to start utilizing those touch points in their own life, if we only impacted 10%, that's 4,200 people. And then it's just a domino effect of, so we've kind of focused on that with every company we have. One, so that the customer feels valued, whether that's a trade, internal or external customer, but two, that our employees see where they play a part in the purpose that we're driving.
I think what's cool there is you start off this way, that it's not just the person that buys the house that's the customer. It's the prospects. It's everyone. And then as you shared that last piece, it's the internal and external customers, meaning everyone inside of John Houston Homes is a customer that you're serving. And I think when you have that perspective, man, from a leadership and a business point of view, people don't get missed. And when people don't get missed, they tie into the purpose. It doesn't matter what the purpose of, you shared your purpose and your mission. Every listener, every person that's viewing this, you have a purpose for your organization. If you looked at it, every person that's inside, outside is a customer and treating them that way. How can I serve you?
Yep.
Man, that's how we make an impact.
Yeah. And what's crazy is as a leader, it takes all the pressure off, because if I'm a leader and I'm just telling you what to do, you're only doing it because you have to. But man, if I say, Tyler, dude, how can I come alongside and serve you? What can I do for you today that will help your life be better today and you actually fulfill what you have today? Then all of a sudden, I do that over a year and I just keep adding value to you. What do you want to do? You want to do anything I ask you to do.
Yep.
And so it's this backwards effect that we think in America, really around the world probably, that this title leadership of telling people what to do is actually going to make a difference and they're going to want to follow you, and they don't want to follow you that way. But it's when you're actually raising them up as leaders and you're saying, no, Tyler, I see something in you and I want to help you get there. How can I do that? And then you just start raising them up. All of a sudden, who's your biggest fan? Your biggest fan is the leader that helped you accomplish, where you are today. Yeah. So it's huge.
Yeah. John, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for being here, sharing all your wisdom, everything that you shared with me. And I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate the impact you have on my life, and hopefully see you again real soon.
We will, man. Thanks for having me, buddy.